other people who don't earn the money they spend said, oh no, we need to do it another 1.5 for everyone for 4.5. So maybe when you get your next Social Security adjustment, it'll be 4.5 too. Don't hold your breath. But the point being is, we did this at the same time that we commissioned a total compensation study that reports in late August and September. So why, knowing that you're doing this big evaluation,
For how much?
the study, it's about $200,000. So another part, you're doing this big study, why would you start making sizable pay adjustments in advance of getting data that tells you how big your problem is? Now, when it comes to police and the sheriff's department, we do have a manning crisis. We have jobs we cannot fill. The sheriff's had to lower his starting age to 18. The police chief has told us that he really can't meet the expectations for public safety with the manning levels that he has. So those adjustments to me made sense for the for the police and for the deputy sheriffs, because they truly have a manning crisis. They can't fill the announcements for all the reasons you can imagine, not just salary, but just how society is responding to that profession. People are saying, oh, I don't want to be that. And people who are that are thinking, I'm out. You know, so you can understand the pressures of that. But we get substantial numbers of highly qualified applicants for every firefighter, every EMS position. We don't have an attrition problem. We don't have a manning problem. And the fire chief and EMS aren't telling us that we have a inability to deliver services. So we should be waiting for the total compensation study results and adjusting their pay based upon empirical analysis. I don't think anyone would say, whose business would just start giving out money because you said, I'm going to pay everybody the same? Well, you can't do that if you can't pass the cost on, but if you can confiscate revenue that you didn't earn, it's someone else's money, like a teenager, it's easy to do. So nonetheless, that's what this budget represents. Over $12 million of additional compensation, but yet we couldn't lower to a revenue neutral rate and fine $7 million, of which about 3 would be the schools and 4 would be ours. Now, how hard is it to find $7 million out of $2.2 billion? Not very hard. Not very hard, and they couldn't do the heavy lift. You know, it's you'll see I put on my Facebook, and Robert sent it around, I did a critique of the budget reconciliation letter. I put my comments in red, but we did not do the job we should have done. We did not exercise our fiduciary responsibilities. We did not take into account how hard people are suffering. This is a very unempathetic budget. In fact, the revenue neutral budget would be the minimal thing we could do. You could make a case it should go lower, but it's not. I know some of you had some questions earlier. One of the things that's driven revenue, transactional revenues on sales taxes are way up in this area. In large part because we have a substantial part of our population that has been insulated, mainly federal, government, and local employees haven't lost a day of work, haven't lost an hour of wage. They've been totally insulated from the economic consequences of COVID, and they're making purchases. And you can see the sales tax revenue is way up. GDP in the first quarter in the country was up 6.5% in a single quarter. That's before all the checks started coming out. So we're going to see tremendous transactional revenue growth because of the stimulus checks and also other things that are happening. So that's the kind of money that is really up, is sales tax revenue in a substantial way. And meal taxes perform much better than anyone would have thought, which often tells you how much of the real estate revenue comes from local residents. An argument I have often made. So I am not voting for this budget. There's lots in the budget that I like, but the way they structure the budget is, oh, well, if you like to vote for the good stuff, then you have to vote and then put your name on this unneeded tax increase. I'm willing to tell people I would have voted for the police. I would have voted for the sheriff. I wouldn't have voted for the 4.5% raise. It's not merited without that study. And I wouldn't have voted for the fire, and I wouldn't have voted for the EMS until we get the results of the study. And then we'll make a decision on the merits. But what we have here is a political pandering budget, in my opinion. That's the add-ons. The city manager did a good job, I thought. We could have still drove the rate down, but he didn't pander. And I think in some ways we kind of undermined the city manager on compensation because he knew we had that study and he gave us a professional answer, but other people were out there had another agenda and it's costing you all money. So that's my view of the world. I'm sure other my colleagues will draw a different conclusion, but I encourage you to invite them out to come out and tell you how they saw the world. But that's my version is I think you have the first right to your money. I think that's important. And that sacrifice should be shared. And when there's a dividend to be paid, everybody should be at the dividend table. And your dividend would have been a real estate neutral, real estate tax rate. You didn't get it and you should have. Take any questions.
Anybody got any questions?
Sir?
Maybe, oh.
Yeah.
Doug.
Yes, sir.
Not on the budget, but the fiasco over the Cavalier Hotel thing that was in the paper.
Yes, sir.
Can you give any more explanation on that?
Certainly.
Oh, wait, and added to that, on the other side of the Cavalier, when they shut down the Atlantic Avenue, period, was there land ceded to them to use, or is that, because they are on part of that Atlantic Avenue?
I'm going to talk about the first one, then I'll get to the second one. And I'll try to keep it not too nitty-gritty in the detail, though I could dive into those too. But when the city, and I didn't vote for this, but when a majority of the city council voted to give Bruce Thompson $2.3 million, and in return, he agreed to maintain that part you call that green lawn that's got Cavalier on it, for the right of the public to drive by or walk on the sidewalk and see that, no entry rights, no touch it rights, just to see it, seeing is believing, we gave him $2.3 million. Believe it or not. But in return for that, he signed this document, which is many pages, and I'm sure all his lawyers looked at it very carefully, which said he couldn't make any alterations, period, on that geographically defined area without prior city approval. Now, a lot of people got caught up in the building permit part, but if he had had 1 million building permits, it wouldn't have changed the fact that those building permits meant nothing until he had approval from the city to do the modification to the property, because that was the agreement. Now, that agreement was paid for with your money. It represented an equity of the public. The city was in the total driver's seat. We could have, one, required him to remove, because he put in like rebar, concrete. It wasn't just, turf grass, this artificial stuff. He made substantial improvements. First without a permit, later got a permit, but it didn't make any difference because he hadn't had approval to make the thing. So we could have made him remove that, or we could have said, if you don't want to remove it all and start over, then you got to pay us. I'm sure if it was roles reversed, we wouldn't have seen such a gratuitous answer that he got from us, which is, oh, sorry, I understand your high-paid lawyers and all your people when you signed that didn't really realize you didn't have to have permission. Really? So he got let go. But what happened is we didn't use our leverage to get money back.
Right.
And that's what I said. We deserve to get money in return for leaving that there, or make them take it out and restore it. We gave away our leverage. You can draw your own conclusions why that was, but that was what that was all about. He wasn't held accountable. And I'm sure there's builders out here, or even people who've had wetland boards or other experiences and gotten fines, and no one said, oh, sorry, you didn't read the fine print? And they said, oh, all is forgiven. It just doesn't happen. And I got I got hundreds of emails from people saying, hey, we didn't get a break like that. It's just wrong, but they gave away your equity and got nothing in return. Now you ask about the closing of 40, I didn't vote for that either, to give him a private driveway and all that kind of good stuff, and in return he had to pay for the sign. But he got this big, huge driveway and where to park his cars and all that good stuff. Well, at the end, he's getting some property, I'm not voting for that either, he's getting some property to put up a sign. So we're going to be giving him, he's going to pay us for it, for this property that we got from VDOT, so that it can be on his property, so it won't be a billboard, because you can't have an off-site sign, because that's a billboard. So we're gonna sell them, I wouldn't have given them anything. Put the sign on your property further back and people can't see it, too bad. But I think we've given enough away. But he does have a right to go across that easement, so we closed the street for him, only for him. That's a Dave Hansen legacy project. And the council majority that voted for it, you can ask me later about the names, I'll be happy to tell you who they were. But that is done, that's a sunk cost, there's no going back, there's no time machine there. It's just one more example of, there's two set of standards in this city. For the well-connected, there's one standard, and for everyday citizens, there's another standard. And you're the people out here are the only ones that can fix that. I can vote no, I can tell you all about it, but in the end, it's like Supreme Court. 6 people make policy, and a lot of those decisions are not reversible. So that's just how it is. I saw, Reed, you had a question? Yes.
Yes, so my question is about debt.
Okay.
It's a two-part question. First part is, I know if you would please tell us, you wanted to do some bond debt to accelerate stormwater management